What's up everybody, Maran here for another weekly update. So there's lots of exciting news to go over here this week, but before I get into the news, I first want to mention I'll be doing my usual weekly live stream at 9 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday night, so join if you can. It's always a fun time hanging out and talking cards with all of you. But getting into the news here this week, the first and most exciting news story for me personally, I have to say, is the reveal of the 2025 Aston Martin Vanquish, which is its new range-topping model here for Aston Martin outside of the limited production stuff that they do. And while it looks to share headlights from the DB12 and has a very similar interior, that's about where the similarities end. So the big headline here is that the 5.2-liter twin-turbo V12 returns, but even that is totally different from before, aside from the displacement of it. But it has a different block, connecting rods, head, fuel system, intake and exhaust ports, as well as the turbos being new. And those turbos can also hold back boost behind the throttle plate now using a new boost reserve feature, and that can unleash that stored boost and overdrive those turbos when lag is unacceptable for the driver. It all adds up to a total of 824 horsepower and 738 pound-feet of torque, the most power-dense motor they've ever made, and one that one-ups the new Ferrari 12 Cylindri with 5 more horsepower and 238 more pound-feet of torque thanks to those turbos. Like the Ferrari, there's no electrification here either. The car is still rear-wheel drive as well, so kind of an old-school setup in a way, and it puts the power through a carbon fiber prop shaft to a transaxle mounted ZF 8-speed automatic and a new electronic locking rear diff to massive 325 wide rear tires. This packaging also allows the car to have a 49% front, 51% rear weight distribution. And speaking of weight, dry weight is 3,911 pounds and can even get 23 pounds lighter if you go for the titanium exhaust over the stainless steel one. And at full roar, it'll do a 3.3 seconds 0 to 62 mile per hour time, a 0 to 100 mile per hour time in 6.2 seconds, and a 0 to 124 mile per hour time of just 9 seconds. Top speed is 214 miles per hour. To handle all that power, it has Bilstein DTX adaptive dampers and 75% more lateral stiffness than DBS, and also standard carbon ceramic brakes. And while you might think this is DB12 based, the wheelbase is actually 3.1 inches longer, and length overall is even a little longer than that. So actually a dramatic change from a platform standpoint, from a dimensional standpoint. It's all really, quite dramatic with the changes. Inside, another change from DB12 is that this ditches the back seat, which personally I'm a little upset about. It would have been nice to have the practicality of the back seat, which you don't get in the Ferrari, but I guess they wanted to truly make it a two-seater just like that Ferrari. Beyond that, though, you have Aston's new infotainment, gauges, and switchgear that we've already seen in the DBX, DB12, and Vantage. And first delivery should arrive late this year or early in 2025, with only about 1,000 of these being built each year, they say, and each starting at $429,000, which is a big increase of almost $100,000 compared to the regular DBS before. But I'm just glad they're making so many of these, especially with these days, everything being limited production, nothing being regular normal production typically. I'm really happy to see that they're going to do 1,000 per year, and they will continue this for multiple years, I'm assuming. And yes, so I think it looks really good. I was a little iffy about the styling when I first saw it, but now that I've had a few days to marinate, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm on board with that. That looks fantastic to me, especially just the rear haunches, and it's just so muscular and just, oh yeah. I have a soft spot for Aston Martin, so maybe I'm biased, but man, I'm adding that one to my lottery dream car wish list. So anyway, let me know your thoughts on the new Vanquish in the comments below. Moving on here, Nissan has revealed the 2025 Armada this week and introduced a more capable Pro 4X version for the first time as well. This is finally a fully new generation based on the new QX80 platform and what is known also as the Patrol in other parts of the world. That means it's still body on frame, but should feel a little less truck-like now thanks to an adaptive air suspension on the Platinum Reserve and Pro 4X trims. And like the QX80, it swaps the V8 for the 3.5-liter twin-turbo V6 instead, and it does 425 horsepower and 516 pound-feet of torque, which are improvements of 25 horsepower and 103 pound-feet of torque. Despite that extra power, the max tow rating remains at 8,500 pounds. You'll also still be able to get it with rear-wheel drive for the buyers that don't need that four-wheel drive system. For the ones that do, though, and want even more capability, there's now the new Pro 4X version, which gives you 9.6 inches of ground clearance, all-terrain tires, unique bumpers with recovery hooks and a better approach angle, skid plates and hill descent control. And as you can see, all Armadas get a boxier and more upright look, but that look can change pretty significantly depending on the trim now, with different trims getting different grills. And they say that double bar one at the top there on the Platinum Reserve is inspired by the second generation Patrol. But I also have to say that to me, it looks like there's some General Motors influence there as well, especially with that D-pillar and the taillights in the back, which look almost like identical to Tahoe taillights to me. But aside from that, the inside is a huge improvement now, and that's partially because it's not based on an ancient vehicle anymore, so hopefully we have some more space here with this new platform as well. There's double 12.3-inch screens as standard, going up to 14.3-inch screens on the higher trims. But unlike the QX80, the Armada sticks with some physical controls below those two screens there. And leatherette comes standard here, even on a base Armada, with actual leather coming on higher trims. And there's no pricing or release date yet, but it's a 2025, so I'm assuming the wait shouldn't be too long for those. But again, I don't think it's the most distinctive styling ever, but I think it should hopefully do well for Nissan, and great to finally, after all these years of an ancient Armada, to finally have a new one is really great. So cool to see that. And speaking of Infiniti, we saw the QX80 here not too long ago. That was the beginning of this next chapter for Infiniti. But now Automotive News has a new report here this week about what to expect next from Infiniti. So last year, Infiniti teased 4 new models, including the QX80, along with an electric SUV and sedan, and a QX65. And so it had previously been thought that the QX65 would follow the same recipe as the QX55, just being a coupier version of the QX60, which it still might be, but according to Automotive News here, the QX65 will instead be their challenger to the Lexus RX, which I guess a coupe version of the QX60 could still technically, fill that, prediction. But according to this reporter, they say that Infiniti hopes the new model will be a sales engine, and a dealer they talked to that claims to have seen it says that it'll have an aggressive design that won't appeal to the soccer mom. And those two quotes seem to contradict each other to me, especially if you're going to go after RX, which does over 100,000 units a year. Polarizing design might not be the way to do that. I mean, obviously, there were some people that didn't complain about RX's new styling, but they're still selling very well. So, I think Lexus knows that buyer, but does Infiniti? We will see. I mean, I do have to say that, I say all the time how BMW comes up with more and more ugly styles all the time, and yet their sales are actually improving and they're doing really well. So maybe there's something to this polarizing thing that, sure, it might drive some people away, like the soccer moms, according to this dealer, but maybe it will give it some extra appeal elsewhere to somehow make it the sales engine that they're hoping it will be, supposedly. So we'll see. Now, as far as when we'll see this, there are still rumors that it'll be around 2026 before we see something like this, which honestly seems a little too late, because if it is truly going to be based on a QX60, which already is a little dated and kind of had a little bit of a refresh already, I don't know if there's maybe going to be a next-gen version in 2026, and we'll see a new QX60 and QX65 come out, around the same time, or what. But yeah, Auto Forecast Solutions also claims that another change here to the Infiniti lineup will be the end of the QX50 and QX55 in 2026 as well, with no successor for those two vehicles, surprisingly. And instead, the rumor suggests that they'll do a nicer version of the Nissan Rogue with a hybrid powertrain as a lower entry-level Infiniti. And then I guess they'll just, be content to have the EVs kind of fill in above that alongside the QX60 and QX65, because I can't really imagine the electric things being any cheaper than those. But, in the middle of the lineup, and then, of course, have the QX80 still at the top there. So we'll see, but best of luck to them with whatever they decide to do, and I'm especially excited to see that new Infiniti electric sedan. I think hopefully that'll be pretty cool, and just be good to see another new sedan out there, especially an electric one, since there's not too many of those. But getting back to debuts here, Volvo has revealed the 2025 and a half XC90, which is the first time I've seen a manufacturer use the half thing in quite a while. So it's still based on the vehicle that's been around for about 10 years now, but this is the most substantial substantial change out of all the little tweaks it's gotten in the past. So, not a new generation, but really nice refresh here nonetheless. And so as you can see, the look has finally changed with new headlights that now illuminate only the edges of the Thor's hammer design, which is also a thinner hammer now, along with a new grille, bumpers, hood, and taillights. There's also new wheels. Inside, a lot of it is the same, but they have opened up the center console for more space, thankfully, for storage there. They've also bumped the screen size up a little bit and adopted some styling on the dashboard there, similar to the XC60 with new vertical air vents. There's also more metal for the speaker grills on the doors there, it seems. And as far as powertrains go, it appears to be identical to before, with the 2-liter Turbo 4 base version with a mild hybrid, and then the T8 version continuing to provide 455 horsepower and 523 pound-feet of torque, along with 32 miles of electric range, thanks to an 18.8 kilowatt-hour battery. And so these are available to order now, with deliveries beginning at the end of this year. And I think that's a really nice little redo, and hopefully that does well for Volvo to kind of, still, it's great they have, this gas and plug-in hybrid option for those that aren't ready to go up to the EX90. I think it makes a lot of sense to have this alongside it. But at that XC90 reveal, they also teased an electric sedan, speaking of those, called the ES90. And it's kind of a surprise. I mean, apparently other outlets were kind of expecting this, and apparently this is behind schedule, but I didn't even know it was a sure thing that we were going to get any kind of electric sedan, especially with Volvo, killing off the wagons and all that. But turns out they are not going all SUV here. They're going to have an ES90. And they say the new sedan will be based on the EX90, though, and it'll debut in March of 2025. So we'll see it here in about 6 months or so. But if it carries over the powertrain from the EX90, then that would mean a 111 kilowatt-hour battery pack with 2 different levels of dual motor power, with either 402 horsepower for the base one or 510 horsepower for the upper range one there. And then as far as mileage, there's estimates, at least for the EX90, are 300 miles. So this would be over 300, I'm assuming, thanks to most likely better aerodynamics. And so yeah, great to also see them still doing a sedan and another electric sedan here on the way. So that's great. Also, 2 other quick things to cover from this Volvo event. First is that the software that you've been seeing here in the new EX90 and the XC90, that'll be rolled out to all 2020 and newer Volvos here through an over-the-air update, thanks to that Android-based system they put in 2020, enabling that. And you'll see, I just actually spent a week with an XC60 Polestar engineered that review will be coming this fall, but that infotainment system is definitely not very good, and so very happy to see they're gonna all be getting this new software here. And I think it's a really nice way to give brand new software to people that have had these Volvos for several years now, and might just leave a nice impression on those owners, as long as it runs well, because I'm assuming maybe the hardware behind the software might not be quite as stout in the 2020 cars, but we'll have to see. Hopefully it actually works well and is actually an improvement. But the last big announcement here at the Volvo event was that, like most other companies, they have pushed back their full EV transition. So it's a little less pushback than some of the others, though, so that's good. Instead, saying that instead of going 100% electric by 2030, they instead plan to have 90% of their sales be a mix of plug-in hybrid and EVs by 2030 instead. And so, the plug-in hybrid thing is a big caveat, because, they could just keep selling XC90 T8s and get rid of the regular gas version or whatever, or push people to the plug-in hybrid, and then you still really have basically the same offerings as you have today. So it's a very safe thing, but at least the goal is to again have most of those be electrified. But their CEO said, "We have seen that this transition is going to take a little bit longer than we first had thought when we first made those targets, and that, as I have said before, business is not a game of perfection. It's about continuous progress and adaptation." So, but yeah, if they manage to actually hit that target, then they'll still be far more electrified than most other brands, and basically more than almost any other brand that isn't exclusively EVs. So, I think that's, still a really optimistic kind of goal. Hopefully that is something they do actually hit, and we'll have to wait and see, but very interesting to see that. And speaking of those changing trends, Mercedes is also changing their product plans. So I previously covered how they're now planning to have just half of their sales be EVs or plug-in hybrids by 2030. So again, Volvo's aiming for 90%. Mercedes aiming for 50%. So there, that shows you right there the giant contrast in ambition from these two companies. But anyway, this week, Autocar spoke with the Mercedes CEO, who revealed to them that they're scrapping the EQS name and that instead there will be two S-classes in the future, ICE and electric. And it essentially is just they're following BMW, the same thing that's worked really well for BMW so far, I think, of having the same car, just have one with a blocked off grille, and otherwise, they're basically the same thing for the 5 Series and the i5. So I think people don't want to have the Jelly Bean styling. Obviously, it's been like one of the most universally criticized things, ever since they came out. And so I think Mercedes can, figure out that the EQS is not welcome by most, and so they're going to, roll it into the new S-Class here instead. But, this is just the poor sales of the EQS, and also apparently the new S-Class isn't selling super well either, so I'm not sure why that one would be affected, but apparently this is why they're going to switch things up a little bit. So the CEO confirmed that they'll share the same bodies for the new S-Class here coming, but that the gas and electric versions will also still be on different platforms, just that those platforms will both fit underneath the body of that next gen S-Class. And the gas one to get an evolved version of the current platform, and the electric one getting a new what's called MB.EA large platform that Mercedes is developing. And so this new S-Class won't arrive until 2030 though, so we still have a while to go. So for the rest of this decade, the EQS and the S-Class will both still remain separate, and both will get refreshes. The EQS is getting its next year, and the S-Class will get one in 2026. And then Autocar also notes that because of how much is shared with the E-Class and the EQE, it's almost guaranteed that those will follow the same change. And, I mean, we already kind of saw this with the G-Wagon and the EQG, and so I guess that was our first indication that this could be the case going forward for everything else. So I think that's exactly what you can expect. The same differentiation you see between EQG and the G-Wagon, you'd expect that kind of same thing here for all these. So anyway, but it's I think it makes sense, and people don't want to have that compromise. And honestly, I just think the EQS just didn't seem like it was quite as big or grand as the S-Class ever anyway. So it almost seemed like a little bit of a downgrade in my mind, just from an appearance standpoint on the outside. If you're someone who doesn't, want the EV thing, it just didn't seem that much appealing over, regular S-Class. But anyway, moving on here. Speaking of refreshes, the Hyundai Ioniq 5 gets one for the 2025 model year, and with it, it introduces a slightly more rugged XRT trim. But first, for the general 2025 changes, the biggest news is that this is the first non-Tesla in the industry to use an NACS connector, last fall and winter, all these automakers were falling like dominoes with all switching over to NACS and ditching the CCS connector here with this mass exodus that happened. And so Hyundai, like they often are, are one of the first to do this switch over here. And so they say that all of their EVs actually will start including this NACS connector as soon as later this year, which we're already into late 2024 at this point. So any day now, I don't know when they're officially going to be starting with this, but Ioniq 5 is going to be the first one to get it here. But beyond that, the battery packs are also bigger for the 2025 Ioniq 5, with the standard range pack on the base car going from 58 kilowatt hours to 63 kilowatt hours, and the rest of the trims going from a 77.4 kilowatt hour pack to an 84 kilowatt hour pack. As this means the base range jumps 20 miles to 240 miles now, and just 7 miles more on the bigger pack with rear-wheel drive to 310 miles now for that one, and it jumps by 30 miles on the all-wheel drive ones to 280 miles there. The other big news here is the confirmation that yes, it'll get a rear wiper thankfully for 2025, and on the outside there's also new bumpers, wheels, and a new rear spoiler as well. Inside, there's the great addition of wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, thanks to the new software we've been seeing in all the new Hyundais here this year, along with a slightly tweaked steering wheel, physical buttons now for heated and cooled seats down by your cup holders there, which is great, and an improved wireless charging pad. And safety-wise, front and rear park sensors and blind spot warning are now standard, and Hyundai also even reinforced the doors and the B-pillars for better side impact protection. Even though it's already an IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus, It already got a good rating in all the crashes, even the new side crash test that is more demanding. It still passed that really well. But I guess there's always room for improvement. And again, other companies maybe react to bad ratings with improvements, but Hyundai's got good ratings and they're still improving it. I really have to respect them a lot for that and commend them for that. So that's awesome. The last change for 2025 here in general is that they're now being built in Georgia, which doesn't change the lease credit, which is $7,500 no matter what. But that does mean that they're eligible now for a $3,750 tax credit if you purchase one. And then moving on to that XRT trim, there's not a whole lot to talk about there, honestly, except that it only comes with all-wheel drive and gives you the unique styling you see here, along with 18-inch wheels on all-terrain tires, a 0.9-inch lift, and a retuned suspension. And Ioniq 5s did not have a lot of ground clearance anyway. I think they started at like 6 inches, so we might be just under 7. Still a far cry from even like a Crosstrek or something, which I think is like 8.7 inches or something. So, not quite beating Subaru to the punch with an electric Crosstrek, but for those who don't need the full amount of ground clearance, kind of beating Subaru to the punch with a rugged EV like this. And we also have the Mach-E Rally, which does similar kinds of mild tweaks for, dirt roads, not actual off-roading, but dirt roads. And, so cool to see them joining the fray here with this. And, so these Ioniq 5s will begin arriving at dealers this fall, they say. So, again, any day now for those as well. Speaking of ground clearance, though, Scout, which is Volkswagen's electric Jeep competitor, has just announced that they'll be debuting their SUV and truck on October 24th. And the announcement email says that while you won't see a lot of teasers or taillights from us between now and October 24th, here's what I can tell you. Like the originals, you'll know a Scout vehicle when you see one. A bold, iconic design featuring multifunctional spaces for gathering and connection. Built for work, play, our new Scout SUV and truck will be rugged, capable, and versatile. They have to be in order to credibly don the Scout badge, and with real tactile controls and real feel, they'll meet the needs of Americans on the road and way off. Which I think is really well worded and is just, kind of nice and refreshing to be like, look, we're not going to give you a million teasers, but it'll be cool. Stay tuned. And I like the no BS approach there with that. But beyond that, we also see the logo and the image of a ceiling mounted compass. But sounds like we won't get much else again until October 24th, but that's okay. I think, there's a lot of, I've been seeing even the Vanquish teaser campaign was just annoying people on Instagram because it was just like one thing after another, and it's like, just show us the car already. I honestly think, maybe one or two is fine, but most of the time you're better off just staying silent until, a week before, maybe do one little teaser, and then that's it. But anyway, cool to get a debut, though, as well. I wasn't expecting this to debut this soon because I thought we had heard that this wasn't actually going to be hitting the roads till, 2026. And, I guess they could show it here in, a month or so and then, have it come out in a year or a year and a half. That's not uncommon, especially with the EVs and stuff these days. But, and maybe it's a little bit ahead of schedule. We'll have to wait and see. But anyway, very interesting to hear that. In another surprise, BMW has announced that they're planning to forge ahead with a new hydrogen production vehicle using fuel cell technology that has been developed with Toyota, and it'll arrive in 2028. And they already have the iX5 hydrogen that I thought was already out in the public, or they really, I think only made a dozen of them or something, but I thought that they were kind of out there. And so I don't know if this is just a next generation version of that. They didn't say anything about what car it'll be in, other than saying it'll be in an existing model and that it will highlight how technological progress is shaping the mobility of the future. And they also say that they're assuming hydrogen infrastructure will significantly improve by 2028, which I wouldn't assume. We know what happens when people assume things. It's the hydrogen infrastructure, at least here in the States, is dwindling. It's going down, not up. And 2028, at this point, we're talking a little over 3 years away. Come on, look at how there's challenges even just with EV chargers, and there's tens and tens of thousands of those things. Are probably approaching almost 100,000 chargers out there, and we have a handful of hydrogen. Do you think there's any realistic future there anytime soon? This is a nice thing to have in the background for, maybe it will be viable in 20 years or something. Maybe even that's kind of a stretch in my mind, but best of luck to them here. Maybe, it can be something for elsewhere in the world. I think, again, commercial applications and things like that could make sense, but as far as a regular production vehicle for the masses, I don't know. This just seems kind of silly to waste time on. But anyway, best of luck to them with that. And lastly, Autoblog found a patent here that Ford filed in early 2023 that was just now published, and it patents a way to deliver advertisements to the infotainment screen through the cars and also through the car's speakers. And so the patent describes the system using the car's location and speed and using that data to better target ads to you. And even more concerning here is that it will even listen to the car's interior and can wait for a break in conversation to deliver the ad during a lull in your conversation there, in the silence. Fill the silence with an ad. And if it hears the occupants being annoyed or closing the ad on their screen, it can show different ones or change the frequency and the volume of them. And not only does that sound horribly distracting, as does this entire premise in general of being caught off guard with ads that you're not wanting. Especially since it seems like they're video ads by the little illustration that we're not talking about like a radio ad or something. But it also sounds like it can work when the car is moving since it's getting speed data. So it's not just like when it's stopped or parked, which also seems concerning. But I don't know if maybe they're trying to, theorize this as a way to subsidize car payments. If you can say, well, with ads or without ads, just like all the subscription services for TV or something. Maybe that would be like a potential they're considering here. You have $50 less a month as long as you promise to keep your radio going the whole time or something. I don't know how this would actually work. But considering the patent we just saw earlier this year, also from Ford, with them talking about how potentially these like semi-autonomous cars in the future could repo themselves and drive themselves back to, corporate or whatever. Hearing all these kinds of things, it just seems like someone internally at Ford just seems like they're getting a kick out of creating fear-mongering clickbait for every blogger and YouTuber that's willing to, capitalize on these things. I mean, again, these are just patents. I don't envision this stuff ever seeing the light of day. Again, I'm sure it must have been some engineer that was just inspired by their subscription choices for their TV streaming stuff. Maybe, I don't know why anyone would enjoy that and think that would be good to spread to other things, but I don't know. Maybe that is the way of the future, is being bombarded with ads or having, maybe scrolling ads on the outside of your car to subsidize the payment. I know there's a company, I think, that actually does like wraps on cars and pays you to drive around with that. So maybe that is the future. As, less and less people can afford these expensive cars, they subsidize them by throwing ads on them somehow, or ads inside of them. I don't know. It sounds like a bleak future, but we will see if it comes to that or not. But sounds like Ford is prepared, at least with a patent, if that does turn out to be the case. But I wouldn't lose any sleep over this just yet. I don't think this is going to happen. There'd be a lot of pushback. I mean, look at how much pushback there already is just for like subscription services for heated seats and things like that. I mean, if there's fuss over that kind of stuff, then there's no way something like this would ever see the light of day unless they pay you a ton of money and make you drive the car around for free or something. But anyway, so wouldn't worry about that, but I'm sure you'll see lots of fear-mongering about this kind of stuff because it just is instant clickbait for anyone that wants to do that. But anyway, moving on here, lastly, I want to thank all of you that are members of the Maran Motoring Club. So we did have one new member that was able to join this past week, thanks to the very generous gifting that was done by Kyle in last week's live stream once again. So huge thanks, Kyle, for your continued generosity. We all really appreciate it, and as do all those members that continue to be able to be members as a result of your generosity. But I want to give a big welcome here also to the new member, Alex Allen. So welcome to the club, Alex. Hope you're enjoying the membership perks so far, and looking forward to chatting with you here in Sunday's live stream if you can make it. And for anyone else that'd like to join, become a member, there's always join buttons here on the video page, the channel page, and a link in the description. But anyway, thank you all very much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments below. Please leave a like and subscribe to keep these videos coming, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.